I'm James Wilson, 27, an office worker. I decided to join a printing company as soon as I graduated from college. It's not that I joined the company because I had any hopes or dreams. It's just because they were the first company to offer me a job. While working at the printing company during the day, I started a side business using the camera I've always loved. Now I've become able to earn a bit from the photography I started learning on my own. I often find myself torn between striking out on my own as a photographer or sticking with a stable job. These days I'm really in a quandary. My work at the printing company is mostly just odd jobs. I've been reprimanded by my boss for seeming unmotivated, and it happens frequently. I knew I stood out at work. I've always stood out in groups. There's a simple reason for this. I've been a kind of mistrustful person since I was a child. Of course, I wasn't like that from the moment I was born. The cause of my mistrust in people comes from childhood trauma. My dad had started his own business, managing a well-known trading company in our local area. He was smart, kind, and bold. To me, my dad was a role model. Even as a child, I thought I would become like my dad and build up his company with him. I might have been precocious in that sense. But this dream was shattered in an instant. My dad suddenly passed away. He collapsed at work, and by the time he was taken to the hospital, he was unconscious. He passed away without ever waking up. I think I was 10 at the time. After my dad's death, my mom became like a zombie. She was always crying, unable to face reality. I think I stood beside her, gritting my teeth. And then, taking advantage of my mom's grief, my uncle took over my dad's business. It seemed to happen in the blink of an eye. He probably had been planning to take over the company all along and was just waiting for an opportunity. With sweet words to my mom, he managed to ingratiate himself and successfully take control of the company. After that, my mom and I were cast out, as if the ladder had been pulled out from under us. There was indeed an inheritance left by my dad. My mom must have received a substantial amount of insurance money. Regarding the takeover of the company, my mom had given up from the start. "Your father left us with more than just the company," she told me, but I couldn't accept it. And so, becoming a bundle of distrust towards humanity, I became an outcast in both elementary and middle school. I think I managed to get by reasonably well during my high school life, learning to fit in to some extent, but during my adolescent years in middle school, I think I was truly an outsider in my class. It's not like I was bullied or anything. I think my classmates just didn't know what to do with me. With glaring eyes, my middle school classmates treated me like a heretic, unable to hide my distrust of humanity. It wasn't like that from the beginning. There was an atmosphere of wanting to get along like typical middle schoolers. It was only me who couldn't accept it. I kept putting up walls between my classmates and me. They must have felt that I was rejecting them. I had no intention of fitting into the class. Realizing this, they seemed to have decided to erase my existence. I began to be ignored by the entire class. The teacher must have noticed this. He must have turned a blind eye. I wanted friends, even though I distrusted people. I was bewildered, not knowing what to do with myself. I felt impatient with my out-of-place self. In such a class, there was a girl who, like me, was an unusual presence. Her name was Miranda White. Miranda, too, was treated as a non-person in the class. It's not that she had a quiet personality. If her opinion differed, she would express it in words, and she had a clear sense of self. What caught my eye first was her straight posture. It wasn't forced but natural and beautiful. I think her core was strong. Her skin was pale white, and her downcast, light brown eyes were hidden by long, rich lashes. Her face was well proportioned, but there was no cheerfulness. I liked to watch her somewhat melancholic profile. She seemed more mature than anyone else in the class. What made her situation slightly different from mine was that Miranda lived her daily life as a non-person among her classmates. In her eyes, no one was reflected. She avoided contact with anyone, and I honestly admired her for her pride. I think I was projecting the image of what I wanted to become onto her. I never asked her why she maintained such an attitude. We exchanged words maybe a few times, if at all. But I still can't forget Miranda. We went to different high schools, so the image of Miranda in my mind remains that of a middle school student. I still remember her well. Eventually, my work as a photographer began to gain recognition. Then a big job came my way. It was an offer from the photographer I was apprenticing under. The job was to accompany someone on a spiritual journey, capturing the experience of this ancient practice in photographs. At first, when I heard the term spiritual journey, I had no idea what it meant. I vaguely thought of something like a mystical figure. Of course, I accepted the offer readily. I didn't have the option to refuse an offer from the person I was apprenticing under. I immediately looked up spiritual journey in the library. It was a mix of mountain worship from ancient Japan and other elements, like Buddhism. It seems there are also elements of Taoism. Retreating to the mountains, undergoing harsh training, and achieving enlightenment. It's a unique Japanese religion and faith. When I think of the appearance of the practitioners, I can't help but connect it with mystical figures. Capturing the training in the rugged mountains would require considerable physical strength from me as well. As I researched the spiritual practice, I became excited. I have a strong curiosity. Capturing a world unknown to me with my camera. I was looking forward to it and couldn't help it. I applied for a vacation at the printing company I worked for. Since the company was solid with employee benefits, I wasn't criticized for taking a long vacation. So, I ended up spending time in the mountains, the object of faith, with several mountain practitioners. I had imagined them to be scarier, but to my relief, they were all strict yet kind-hearted people. They informed me of the taboos during their training, and I asked them to pretend I wasn't there so I could capture their natural states. It seemed I could photograph them more naturally that way. The term mountain hermit apparently means one who lies down in the mountains to train. It's strongly influenced by nature worship that has been present in Japan since ancient times. Some of them run through paths where no path exists at an unbelievable speed, making me feel as if I've encountered a real mythical creature. Surprisingly, some even have wives and children. I was truly astonished when I was told that they carry on with normal lives while training in various spiritual mountains all around Japan. They step away from the hustle and bustle of the city, enter the spiritual mountains, worship nature, and lie down in the mountains. They absorb the spiritual energy of the mountains and return to the city. Some people also spoke of how living such a life, far removed from daily routine, allows them to confront themselves. I found myself becoming more engrossed in this job than I had thought. Initially, I just wanted to take cool shots. But as I heard various stories, I decided to capture them as they truly were. The sight of them racing through the mountains was more vibrant and full of energy than any human I've seen in the city. I clung on desperately and frantically snapped away with my camera. The shooting period seemed to pass in the blink of an eye. When everything was over, I was left dumbfounded. What remained was the realization that my petty pride had narrowed my scope and vision. I feel I should tell my old self, who had shut himself away in a shell of mistrust, "It's okay, come on out." I felt that way from the bottom of my heart. I think the days I spent with the mountain hermits were a turning point that felt like the whole world had been turned upside down. As proof, I started actively doing things I had been avoiding. I began to accept invitations to go drinking with colleagues I always avoided, or to events hosted by my boss. I became a little more talkative at work, able to exchange opinions with my colleagues. I was stunned by the weight of the shackles I had placed on myself. I was even surprised to feel as if I could see farther away as I opened my heart. And right now, there's me, ready to take on a new challenge. I usually would throw it straight into the trash. But this time, it was an invitation to a middle school reunion. There have been 2 reunions so far, and I have missed both of them. I didn't even respond. Back in middle school, I must have been an eyesore to my classmates. I don't think anyone would want to see me. But this time, I gathered the courage and marked my attendance. By attending the reunion I've always avoided, I hope to see a whole new world, and this expectation fills my heart. And there's just a tiny bit of hope. I want to see Miranda White once again, the girl I used to admire back then. This small expectation and hope kept me excited until the day of the reunion. On the reunion day, when I told my name at the reception, the girl handling the registrations looked at me twice in surprise. She obviously didn't expect me to attend. I think she was one of those girls who followed the queen bee of our class, Samantha Smith. In our middle school class, there was a clear hierarchy. At the top was Samantha Smith. She had a slightly mature face and was pretty, but her personality was too strong for me. What was amazing about Samantha was that she was aware of her beauty and used it as a weapon. She controlled the entire class with it. Remembering how she manipulated her classmates and took satisfaction in it makes me sick. Samantha will probably be at the venue too. I've had a bad experience with her as well. She probably was in a bad mood that time. Our shoulders touched a little when we passed each other at the classroom entrance. Of course, it wasn't on purpose. She made a big fuss about it. The girls in the class all sided with Samantha. It was as if they were competing to see who could support her first. They were afraid that if they were too slow, they might become Samantha's next target. Everyone was afraid of Samantha. In the end, I was kicked out of the classroom by the girls and had to spend the day in the nurse's office. Even now, thinking back on it, it's an unpleasant memory. I really don't feel like eagerly meeting that person. But if I run away now, I'll just repeat the same mistake. Taking a deep breath, I entered the venue. The reunion venue was set up as a standing cocktail party, and nearly everyone had gathered. At a glance, I could see a few faces I vaguely remembered. I unconsciously looked for the figure of Miranda White. She probably wouldn't show her face in a place like this. As I expected, Miranda was nowhere to be seen in the venue. I can't believe it, you really showed up, The voice addressing me, as I was observing the venue from the corner, was from Phil Johnson, a classmate. He was one of those who had been annoyed by me and had taken the lead in ignoring me. Could it be that growing up means Phil would initiate a conversation? Phil, you still have the look from our middle school days. I respond with ordinary words. I have no intention of taking Phil's childish bait. Apparently not pleased with my attitude, Phil continued to pester me. You've become capable of such a dull response, pretending to be a regular adult, but you're probably still an outsider at work, right? People like you are what they call social misfits, you know. Is he a little drunk? Phil's face was red. That's true. I'm kind of an outsider. I affirm Phil's words. It's not a lie. What's with that? Trying to act like a mature adult. My nonchalant brushing off of his sarcasm seems to irk him. Phil's voice starts to get louder and louder. What's going on? Gradually, people began to gather around Phil and me. I've gotten older, after all. So have you, Phil, right? You can always be a middle schooler. At my words, Phil's face turned red. He probably finally realized how embarrassing he was being. "You know, James, you've really changed since becoming an adult. You were always good looking. Aren't you popular now?" The crowd parted suddenly, and through the gap appeared Samantha Smith. It was exactly the same as in middle school. The only difference was the favorable attitude toward me. It hasn't changed, then or now. I've never been popular, not once in my life. I answer with a bitter smile, and Samantha's eyes light up. They were eyes trying to discern if I was sincere. I've always hated that look in Samantha's eyes. A look that probes others, evaluating them. I recall with disgust how Samantha's comments after such evaluation were directly connected to my standing in class. "Well, that's something. Come over here, James. We have a lot to catch up on." At this moment, my place was at the side of Samantha, the queen bee. Phil glares at me with resentful eyes. It's well known in class that Phil has always had feelings for Samantha. I think Phil must be boiling with rage to see Samantha taken away by me, who used to be the butt of jokes. Samantha is aware of Phil's feelings. She's been toying with Phil's heart all along. "Oh, by the way, you were dating Miranda in middle school, right? I saw you during graduation. Samantha doesn't suit you. You're better off with damaged goods like Miranda." I reflexively turned to Phil's insinuating words. Reacting too much was a mistake. Phil looks at me as I turn around and whistles. "Huh, what did you see? Were you dating Miranda?" Samantha turns to Phil with a surprised look. Phil starts talking triumphantly. "On graduation day, I was planning to confess to Miranda. Miranda was normal even on the day of graduation. But she stood by the window, staring at the school gate long after the ceremony ended. We were set to go to different high schools. This was my only chance. Miranda." When I call her, Miranda slowly turned around. She probably realized that I was looking at her. On her pale skin, from her left eye down to her collarbone, there was a scar like a keloid, trailing straight down. I'd heard someone gossiping that it was a wound from a major accident. This scar was why Phil referred to Miranda as damaged goods. "You know, after we graduate," I stutter, struggling to get the words out. Her straightforward gaze makes it difficult to say what I had planned since the night before. I just want to get her contact information. I begin to panic. Miranda then smiles gently. "Don't be nervous around me, you weirdo." A voice filled with dignity and a hint of laughter. The words that Miranda spoke to me, I think it was the first time. "We will go to different high schools, right? It's the last day today, huh?" I don't know what to say to Miranda, who mutters with deep emotion. Suddenly, her body fluttered as if carried by the wind. With a light agility, she jumped beside me, standing in my arms. She reached up with both hands to press my shoulders and stretched herself upward. Her warm breath grazed my cheek. The next moment, something soft touched my cheek. In an instant, the sensation moved away, and her hands that had been on my shoulders were gone. Dodging, the moment I realized it was Miranda's lips, my face started to burn with embarrassment. What? I inadvertently sat down on the spot, my knees giving way. Watching me, Miranda chuckled. Her face was also slightly flushed. "I thought I'd leave my mark, my first mark. Now you won't forget me, will you, James?" With a triumphant look, she told me this before running out of the room like the wind. I was left alone, as if in a daydream. I touched my cheek with one hand, and it felt a little hot. This was a secret between Miranda and me. I had no idea at the time that someone had been peeking at our secret. Even if it was unavoidable that someone had seen us, I didn't want them to ruin my memories now. I glared at Phil. Phil looked at my changed complexion with satisfaction. Just when he was about to triumphantly reveal Miranda and my secret, The entrance door opened, and someone called James. Everyone's eyes immediately turned to the entrance. "James, glad to find you." Miranda spotted me, and just like before, ran to me like the wind. My heart began to beat loudly at this sudden reunion. "Thank you, James. I just wanted to tell you that." Ignoring the classmates surrounding me, Miranda deeply bows before me. What do you mean, huh?" I inadvertently responded just like I did on graduation day. Where did the mature me from a moment ago go? That's how I felt. Surprised, Miranda hands me a book. It's the photo album I took. That photo album with the theme of ascetic mountain practices, something akin to a spiritual retreat. A photo album that shouldn't be in stores yet and should only be in the hands of those involved. How do you have this? There are so many things I don't understand, and my mind is in turmoil. Peering over Miranda's shoulder at the photo album, Samantha exclaims, "This is the photo album taken by Noah, isn't it? He photographs more than just models." I had no idea. Samantha's words draw a crowd of girls. They all love the photos taken by Noah. I'm starting to feel embarrassed being here. Noah is the name I use when working as a photographer. It's my other name that no one knows. Actually, this is my brother. James took these for me. Looking at this photo album, I finally understood my father and brother. It was James who broke the spell that had been binding me. Miranda embraces the photo album as if it were precious. Wait. Noah is James. Samantha's words send a murmur through the crowd. There's a bit of a reason for this. Noah's models always become superstars afterward. This is the superstition associated with me. Indeed, any unknown model I shoot takes off afterward. Their own hard work is part of it, of course. But now, having a photo taken by me is known as a shortcut to success. Are these hermits in the mountains your brothers? Ignoring Samantha's line, I asked Miranda. Miranda nodded sagely and enlightened me. The hermits are Miranda's half-brothers. She said that she doesn't share any blood with her father either. Her mother, who was a frail woman, married as a second wife and passed away shortly thereafter. Losing her mother, Miranda was left at home in grief, while her father and brothers went away to practice religious asceticism. Left alone at home, Miranda gradually closed off her heart. It was the same at school. She locked away herself that would inadvertently expected something from others. By not expecting anything from anyone, she probably avoided getting hurt. Even though she wanted to go with them, she couldn't, due to many sacred mountains being off-limits to women. What on earth were they doing, leaving her behind? Miranda was always suspicious. She always resisted her brothers and father, wondering if they really had to accomplish something so important that they would leave her feeling so lonely. My brothers showed me this photo album, and I saw the candid shot he took with you. I knew it was you, James, right away. Miranda looked at the earnest images I had taken of her brothers and finally understood them. Thank you for showing me the truth. She looked straight into my eyes as she said it. Even with makeup on, the scars on her face were not hidden. As I was about to speak to her, Samantha slid her body between Miranda and me. James, take a picture of me. You know I'm modeling, right? As a favor to a classmate. Samantha said that with a flattering smile. Her queen-like attitude had vanished. I know she is working as a model. Her reputation among the makeup artists was terrible. I don't shoot anything ugly, sorry. What instantly came out of my mouth was my true feelings, and Samantha's face turned bright red. She must have never been humiliated like this in public before. I could hear the giggling of the girls around us. Right now, the only one I want to photograph in this venue is Miranda in front of me. Samantha flew into a rage and raised her hand but seemed to restrain herself at the last moment. Apparently, she didn't want to make a further spectacle of herself. She turned on her heel and left the venue. I watched as Phil chased after her. "I don't want to be photographed, but show me what you'll shoot first." Miranda said that to me with a smile. "After all, my mark is still on your cheek, isn't it, James?" When Miranda said that, I inadvertently touched my cheek. It was getting a little hot, just like on graduation day. Later on, I would find myself in a terrible predicament. I was surrounded by the strong hermits and sitting solemnly in the center, on my knees. Surrounded by Miranda's brothers and father, I was being questioned. "Can you make our sister, our daughter, happy?" The intensity was even more serious, and during their training times. I spoke from the depths of my heart. "I will make her happy. Please give Miranda to me." With a determination that wouldn't break, I spoke, and voices of approval rang out. "Well said." I was relieved. It seemed I had somehow been accepted. "What? Wait. Actually, no." Suddenly, Miranda raised her voice. Everyone present turned to her with bewildered expressions. Where did the results of this hour-long discussion go? "Just wait. Just a little bit longer. I want to be a part of this family a bit more." Looking at the men surrounding me, Miranda finally realized how much she was cherished by her family. "I want to be a sister to my brothers a little longer, a daughter to my father. Is that wrong? Just a little bit longer. Please let me stay." With puppy-dog eyes, she said that it was impossible to refuse. "You're impossible. When you're satisfied, become a part of my family." I answered with a wry smile. The next moment, the men started lifting me up in the air in the low-ceilinged living room. Me, flying in the air. Coming for a marriage proposal and ending up being hoisted in the air. But looking at the happy tears flowing from the faces of the men, I felt my choice wasn't wrong at all. And no matter how long it takes, it's okay. Because Miranda's mark is on my cheek. How did you like that? Subscribing to the channel will be a great encouragement for our production. See you in the next video.